views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Participating with us at the Borough Board and District Service Cabinet meetings. I don't know, I always think it's exciting. Thank you for the cosign over here, Community Board 2, my new favorite community board. As always, I am here for your pleasure. I am Marika Scott McFadden. I will be Deputy Borough President in God's Country of the Bronx. Before we do introductions, I would like to just point out for everyone that we are just 24 hours away from celebrating Bronx Week. Which begins tomorrow, May 9th, and goes to May 19th. Those of us who are familiar with math will say that's 10 days. That's not a week, that's more than a week. And we love it that way in the Bronx, that we get to celebrate all things Bronx, all things great from the Bronx, and within the Bronx for more than a week. In fact, 10 days. We're excited about that. We're excited to get started tomorrow. And there are many, many exciting days, so please visit the website ilovethebronx.com. You can get all of your activities for Bronx Week, as well as put that in your browser. Bookmark that, because you can always keep up with activities that the Bronx Tourism Council puts out, which is, includes Bronx Week, it includes our Restaurant Week, it includes lots of other great things that are going on in the Bronx throughout the year. So please, ilovethebronx.com is something that you should visit often. And let's get started. Again, I've introduced myself. To my right is, to my left, my other right.
Community Liaison for Councilmember Diana Allen.
H. Gonzalez, Councilman Mark Jonai's office.
Joseph McManus, representing Councilmember Torres.
Felix Garcia, Councilmember Gibson's office.
Bill Hall, Chair Board 12.
George, Community Board 12.
Diego, Community Board 11.
Shirley Sanandres Alonso, Assistant District Manager, Community Board 9.
Rosemary Ginty, Chair, Community Board 8.
Karen Gannon, District Manager, Community Board 8. Rochelle Navarro, Community Board Coordinator, Community Board 9.
Good morning, Rocco Square, Community Board 2.
Martha Sabia, the General Counsel for the Borough President.
In the gallery.
Tell Mayor's office, it's
Active.
Grybauskas.
Good morning, everyone. Director of City Commission Human Rights.
Good morning, Dorisa Cruz, DOT.
Good morning, Jo Karina Duarte, New York City Emergency Management.
Effie Artisoni, DP.
Good morning, Erica Peralta Downey, New York City Department of Health.
Good morning, excuse my voice, Deborah Lomax, New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, Bronx Neighborhood Health Action Center.
Good morning, Anita Reyes. I'm also with the Department of Health.
Good morning, Lauren Shiman, also with the Department of Health.
introduce yourself.
Jean Hill, Community Board 7.
Thank you, thank you. We quickly want to thank BronxNet as well for the video and our sound guy. We're going to be doing a little bit better this month as opposed to our last meeting. So, pursuant to Chapter 4, Section 85, and Chapter 69, Section 2706 of the New York City Charter, a joint meeting of the Bronx Borough Service Cabinet and Bronx Borough Board will take place here today, Wednesday, May 8th, 2019, starting at 9:15-ish at 851 Grand Concourse in this wonderful rotunda. We'll jump right into our agenda, and we'll have community health profiles with disparities, presented by Lauren Shiman and Neighborhood Health Evaluator, Center of Health Equity, Bronx Neighborhood Health Action Center, New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. So we want to invite them to come and make the presentation.
Thanks so much. Good morning, everyone. Can everybody hear me okay? Yes, okay, great. My name is Lauren Shiman. I'm the Acting Director of Research and Evaluation at the Bronx Neighborhood Health Action Center. I'm here today with my colleagues, our Deputy Director, Deborah Lomax, and Director of Community Engagement, Anita Reyes. Dr. Bedell sends her deep regrets. She really wanted to be here today in person. Unfortunately, we're in the midst of the largest measles outbreak in New York City since the 1990s, and she's been activated to help with that effort, so she wasn't able to be with us in person today. I'm here today to share an exciting resource with you. The New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene created community health profiles for the 59 unique community districts in New York City. And that helps to bring data and information to community groups, policymakers, researchers, and many others who want to advocate for the health in their communities. The community health profiles are created at a neighborhood level, at the community district level. So of course there are 12 community health profiles in the Bronx, and some of you have your respective community district profiles in front of you. Before presenting data about key health disparities that impact communities in the Bronx, I want to put this information in its historical context. Racism and racist policies have had a long-standing influence on the health disparities that impact communities in the Bronx. For example, in the 1930s, the federal government developed a policy commonly known as redlining. Redlining was a government-sponsored banking practice that determined who would be approved or denied for mortgages across the United States. Neighborhoods that were outlined in red were deemed too risky to have a government-backed mortgage, often because there were people of color living in the neighborhood. Neighborhoods that were green-lined, like the Upper East Side, were eligible for government-backed loans. And so in those communities, buying homes helped to accumulate wealth among white residents. The impacts of this persist today, and housing discrimination continues in different forms, such as predatory lending or racial steering, which is when there's a practice guiding prospective home buyers away from certain neighborhoods because of their race. New York City is one of the most, if not the most, segregated cities in the US. And looking at these maps, you can see some of the lasting impacts of this. On the left is a redlining map from the 1930s of New York City. I know some of you are a little bit far away, but it just shows areas that are red, blue, yellow, and green across New York City. And you can see there's a blue circle highlighting a green area in the Upper East Side. The same area, looking at this map on the right from 2013, shows that it's a population of a concentration of high white people. Intergenerational impacts of accumulating wealth and financial security contributes to what we see today. Neighborhoods that were green-lined in the 1930s are now neighborhoods that have the lowest rates of premature mortality, disease, and poverty. And they're neighborhoods where they're the highest concentration of white people, like the Upper East Side, the Upper West Side, and the Financial District. Because of these persistent geographic disparities, a top priority for the Department of Health is to see a city where a person's health is not determined by his or her zip code. So, while each community profile contains detailed information about that particular neighborhood, information is also provided about the city as a whole, the borough, and the community district with the most favorable rate for a particular indicator. We make these comparisons to make injustice visible. It's meant as a call to action for all of us to eliminate these disparities. The goal of providing these data at a neighborhood level is to encourage all of us as community leaders and members to advocate for your neighborhoods by having a stronger understanding of the health in the neighborhood. It can help to prioritize health issues that may be most pressing in your community and can help in targeting resources for planning purposes and for designing activities that are tailored to specific needs. This slide shows more details on what you'll find in each of the profiles. Each indicator in the profile represents a measure that aims to broadly describe the health of a community. So you'll find a whole range of indicators there, from basic demographic information to information about key health behaviors like smoking or eating fruits and vegetables, as well as data about actual health outcomes like diabetes and premature mortality. There are some indicators in there that might surprise you to find in a health profile, like elementary school absenteeism or incarceration rates. But we know that health is shaped by conditions in which people live, grow, play, learn. The conditions in our neighborhoods, including poverty and a lack of critical services, can be important factors in health, and so those are included in here as well. This slide just shows an example of the color scheme that's used in the profiles, just to orient you to what you'll see in there. The dark teal represents the community district of interest for that profile. The light teal represents the average in the borough where that community district's found, so of course here the Bronx. And the blue represents the overall New York City average, and then that green at the end, that shows the community district with the most favorable outcome for that particular indicator. Sometimes most favorable means the lowest number. For example, when we're talking about infant mortality, sometimes it means the highest number, like the percentage of people who are physically active. In some cases, the figures even have an arrow to help orient you to the healthier side of the spectrum. Because neighborhoods are fast changing, each profile starts with a Who We Are page. That shows some demographic information for the community district as a whole. This slide is showing it for Bronx Borough overall, and you can see that the Bronx has a population of about 1.5 million people. That's about 17% of New York City's population. About 56% of Bronx residents identify as Latino, Latina, or Latinx, 30% identify as Black, 9% as white, and 4% as Asian. 26% of Bronx residents report limited English proficiency, and over a third are foreign-born. But even within the Bronx, of course, we have great variation in the composition of community districts. Take, for example, Hunts Point and Longwood, and Williamsbridge and Baychester. For any of you who know these neighborhoods, very different images come to mind. In Hunts Point and Longwood, 76% of residents identify as Latino, whereas in Williamsbridge and Baychester, 65% identify as Black. The neighborhoods have similar age distributions, but as you can see here, they differ in the percentage of residents who report limited English proficiency or the percentage who are foreign-born. Each profile contains demographic information like this about the community district of interest. The first broad category of indicators included in the profiles is social and economic conditions. And as you can see here, a whole range of information is included there. Things like education measures, income and rent burden, incarceration rates, and more. It's important to highlight here that public health research clearly shows an individual's health is determined by their personal characteristics. For example, their own education level, income, or employment status, but also in the context that they live. For example, if I live in a poor neighborhood and there are few amenities and my neighbors there are struggling to pay rent, even if my personal income is high, my health status would be worse than expected because of heightened daily stressors. Similarly, when a child regularly misses school, his or her long-term health is likely to be impacted. But high rates of elementary school absenteeism impact all of the students in the school. because absenteeism causes disruption to routines, to teachers, and to friendships. In this presentation, I'm going to highlight just a few indicators from each section, just to show you the type of information that's in there. But I really encourage you to take a close look at the profile for your own community district and explore everything that's in these profiles. This slide shows economic stress. In this section of economic disparity, we learn a lot about things outside of a doctor's office that impact health. This can include access to quality education, jobs, safe spaces to live, and residents in high poverty neighborhoods often lack these resources. Living in high poverty neighborhoods limits healthy options, and it makes it difficult to access quality health care and resources that promote health. For example, in Fordham and University Heights, as you can see here, 34% of residents live in poverty, compared to 20% across New York City on average. That's one of the highest rates among New York City neighborhoods. In Fordham and University Heights, unemployment rate is also higher than the city average. And 65% of residents there are rent burdened, meaning they spend more than 30% of their household income on housing costs and might have difficulty affording food, clothing, transportation, and health care. Another measure of a healthy community is high school graduation rates. This slide shows the high school graduation rate for Hunts Point and Longwood, where 3 out of 5 high school students graduate in 4 years. That's lower than the citywide average and one of the lowest rates in the Bronx. The next category of indicators included in the health profiles is on housing and neighborhood conditions in each community district. The environment we live in can make it easier or more difficult for New Yorkers to lead healthy lives, and so this section of the profile includes information about air conditioning in homes, air pollution, housing quality, the bicycle network coverage of a neighborhood, pedestrian injuries, and food environment. Every resident has the right to live in housing that's safe and pest-free. Poorly maintained housing is associated with poor health outcomes, including worsened asthma and other respiratory illnesses. In Fordham and University Heights, for example, only 18% of renter-occupied homes are adequately maintained by landlords, meaning that they're free from heating breakdowns, cracks, holes, peeling paint, and other defects. Additionally, 47% of residents in that community report seeing cockroaches in their home, a potential asthma trigger. Another important environmental factor is the availability of healthy food in a community. Bodegas are less likely to have healthy food than supermarkets, and this indicator shows the ratio between supermarkets and bodegas in a neighborhood. For example, in Belmont and East Tremont, for every 1 supermarket, there are 37 bodegas. This ratio varies dramatically across the city. The healthiest community district has 1 supermarket for every 3 bodegas. And on the other end of the spectrum, 1 community district has 1 supermarket for every 57 bodegas. In Belmont and East Tremont, we also have 2 New York City farmers markets. So that's another source of healthy food there. In 2018, we added a new section to the health profiles called maternal and child health. This includes indicators about pregnancy outcomes, teen pregnancy, childhood obesity, children's hospitalizations, and emergency department visits. Access to quality health care is critical to a mother's health before, during, and after her pregnancy. And of course, that's also critical to the health of our littlest New Yorkers. In Williamsbridge and Baychester, the rate of expectant mothers who receive late or no prenatal care is higher than the citywide average, and it's one of the highest rates in the city. Actually, in the Bronx, 11 of our 12 community districts have rates for this indicator that are worse than the citywide average. Teen pregnancy is an indicator that's declined across New York City over the last few years. This slide shows Hunts Point and Longwood, where the teen birth rate is 36.2 per 1,000 teenage girls. That remains one of the highest rates in the city. Let's move now to the next category of indicators that's shown in the profiles. The profiles include data about several measures of healthy living, including health behaviors like smoking, physical activity, and others. We know that smoking, poor quality diet, and physical activity are risk factors for chronic diseases like high blood pressure, diabetes, and other problems. One way that we look at health is by self-reported health. How residents feel about their own health can be a good measure of their overall mental and physical well-being. In Kingsbridge Heights and Bedford, 67% of residents rank their health as excellent, very good, or good. That's lower than the rest of New York City and one of the lowest rates across the city. The Take Care New York 2020 goal would be to have 82% of residents across the city ranking their health as at least good. Sugary drink consumption can increase the risk of type 2 diabetes, heart disease, cavities, weight gain, and obesity. And we know that industry marketing affects people's behaviors, particularly around sugary drinks. Sugary drinks are heavily marketed to youth and to communities of color. While sugary drink consumption's decreased across New York City to 23%, 4 out of every 10 Parkchester and Soundview adults drink at least one sugary beverage a day, and that's one of the highest rates in the city. Everyone deserves access to medical care, and so there is a section in the profiles dedicated to healthcare outcomes. Having quality access to care includes having health insurance, avoidable preventable hospitalizations, and getting vaccinated from preventable diseases. One way that we measure access to health care is by looking at health insurance coverage. Health insurance makes it easier to get affordable primary care, and that can help New Yorkers manage chronic conditions and stay healthy. Citywide, the percentage of uninsured New Yorkers has decreased over the last 5 years from 20% down to 12%, which is great. The Bronx has kept pace with that. There are also 12% of Bronx residents who are uninsured. But some communities still struggle to receive care here. In Fordham and University Heights, for example, 16% of adults went without needed medical care, even if they had insurance. Lastly, the community health profiles contain data about a whole range of health outcomes. That includes obesity, diabetes, hypertension, HIV, hepatitis C reports, binge drinking, mental health hospitalizations, infant mortality, and premature death. Chronic diseases such as obesity, diabetes, and hypertension are featured in the profiles because we know this is really important to long-term health. Looking at Highbridge and Concourse neighborhood, there's a 34% rate of adult obesity, which is higher than the rest of New York City. 17% of adults in this community have been diagnosed with diabetes, and 42% of adults have been told they have hypertension. These are all higher than the rest of New York City on average, and the rate of hypertension in particular is the highest in the Bronx. New York City's infant mortality rate has declined in recent years, but we still see disparities persist. In Morris Park and Bronxdale, the infant mortality rate is higher than the citywide rate, and one of the highest in the city. The Take Care New York 2020 goal citywide would be to have less than 4.4 infant deaths per 1,000 live births. And you see in this community, we have 8.1 currently. And lastly, I want to talk briefly about premature death. This is defined as death before 65. And in the profiles, each community has a list of their leading causes of premature death shown in a back-to-back bar chart like this. This is showing, in this example, the top 5 causes of premature death in Morrisania and Cretonia, and it compares it to those same causes in New York City overall. In this side, you can see that cancer and heart disease are the leading causes of premature death in this neighborhood, and the third leading cause is drug-related deaths. These profiles are available for download on our website. If you go to newyorkcity.gov and search community health profiles, you can easily download the full set of the 59 community districts there, or you can email us at profiles@health.nyc.gov for more information. The entire data set's also available for download if you want to take a closer look at some of these numbers. If you have other questions about health in New York City that's not included in the profiles, you may be able to find answers on the Department of Health website using EpiQuery, the Environmental and Health Data Portal, or the Neighborhood Health Atlas. And finally, we're going to be releasing what we call dynamic community profiles. That's an online tool that allow you to further customize and compare community district indicators. Thanks so much for having me here today to share these profiles with you. We're happy to answer any questions now that you might have about this data or about the resource.
Any questions? Mr. McManus, followed by Mr.
When you did the high schools, why did you only do public schools?
That's a great question. I think it's easier to access publicly available data about New York City public schools, and as a public agency, we have a working relationship with Department of Ed, but there may be more information available about graduation rates at other schools as well.
Well, okay. So then that data might be slightly off then. Okay. The other question is, you have all these data. I didn't hear, and I just got this booklet, so I don't know if there's solutions in there. So what are your solutions? Because it's easy to say what the problems are.
Thank you for asking that. That's a great question. So at Department of Health, part of what we're focused on is bringing accurate information out into the community and sharing it broadly. We also have a number of programs working to address many of these issues. I don't know if one of my colleagues want to speak in more detail to some of the work that we're engaged in right now.
So in New York City, we have various approaches to the obesity prevention, and we use a holistic and also use different strategies with programs, policies, and activities. And one of the things that we're doing is we're working with schools. We're trying to work with schools to get elementary schools to start creating a culture of wellness. And so with that is introducing local wellness policies that really can get kids moving, eating healthier. So that's one of the things. We're also working with farmers markets, trying to bring farmers markets to the area and giving coupons so that people can go there and make it more affordable for them. So there's $2 coupons that we work with organizations to distribute to their clients. And this is during the from July all the way to November. So we work with about 150 organizations. We're also working with pediatricians and other clinical staff to promote pediatric obesity prevention and interventions in the area, as well as partnering with others on new salt reduction. It's called the National Salt and Sugar Reduction Initiative to set targets for sugar reduction in packaged foods and beverages. And we're asking industries to meet those targets to reduce added sugars. So those are some of the things that we're doing in terms of addressing obesity. We know that that affects chronic diseases. So there is a variety of things that we're trying to do in terms of interventions and policies and programs to address this. And also, we're working with schools and the DOT. How can we get more people to be more physically active? At our action center, we actually offer shape-up classes. We also offer classes for moms who just had a child. We're also giving out cribs and car seats and doing a lot of education and support for families, and parental support is one of the things. I'm not sure if you've heard, but with this administration, we opened the Action Center. It's called the Bronx Neighborhood Action Center. In the past, it was known as the District Public Health Office. And the idea behind it is, how can we activate this space for the community? And how can we offer more holistic approaches? So there's clinics in our center, but we're also trying to link the clinics with other resources. So we talked about all the other social determinants of health that there are. So how can we connect the family if they need other referrals? So that's one of the things that we're doing.
Yeah, so basically you're saying it's poverty that's creating a lot of these issues. So in the neighborhoods that people are doing well, that means that group of people have a better income. What is there, what do you, I mean, I know it's not a health issue, but government's trying to do everything. What are they trying to do to make businesses, which these crazy, enormous profits they're making, to pay people more? If they pay people more and gave them health insurance, I think government would have to do less. I know it's not your issue, but I'm a firm believer in that.
Okay, thank you for that,
Okay.
Mr. Hall.
Hi, I'm Bill Hall, Ward 12. Two questions. How often does the Department of Health conduct these profile assessments?
These profiles are updated, I believe it's every 3 years.
Every 3
So
years?
these are the 2018 profiles that were just released at the beginning of 2019. But if you go to the website, you can look back and see 2015 profiles as well. You'll see changes have been made, but many indicators are the same, and you can look back in your community
So
district.
the next profile assessment will be in 2021, 2022, somewhere in that area?
So these are 2018, so they'll be 2021.
And can we request that you give a presentation to our community board?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Really quick question because I like data. And so, are you guys leveraging open data at all? Like posting this? Are you familiar with the Do It sort of initiative of like publicly posting data sets? Because you refer to data sets being available at the Department of Health, I think this would be useful if you cast a wider net, for information purposes.
Just to clarify, do you mean is this data publicly available, or do we access other agencies'
Do
data?
you make it publicly available on websites besides DOH websites, I guess? Do you make it publicly available in open data, which is part of New York City as well?
Oh, I see. I believe these data sets are available for download only through the Department of Health website. I don't know of another site that they're cross-referenced on, although it might exist.
Mr. Torres.
Thank you. I was perusing the book and I heard your presentation. There's only one mention of mental health. The city of New York has spent a considerable amount of money on Thrive NYC. My community board is getting a diversion center, which we're not very happy about. Why is that ignored in this profile?
Thanks for asking about that. Mental health is a huge issue and something we're doing a lot of work on in the Bronx Neighborhood Health Action Center, and as you said, across the agency. These profiles are meant to give a balanced look across all different factors that influence health, and of course, we don't want them to be 100 pages long, but we do have a lot of other data about mental health that's available on the Department of Health website. So for example, if you go to EpiQuery, you can look at community health survey data. That's an annual survey that's done across New York City, and you'll be able to look at your community district in particular, and there are quite a few mental health indicators there. But if you're looking for something specific, feel free to connect with me, and I can help you track it down.
My final point will be, it seems that these profiles are put together, I guess, to give someone a snapshot in the event that, I guess, they're looking at making decisions in regards to providing services in a district. So you've stated several times of the under-resourced or the not enough resources for particular communities. Is the city going to use this information now to provide these services? Because again, I hate to harp on the diversion center, but that is a DOH facility. It is going into my community board. We rank number 12 overall, yet we're the ones that are getting it, even though there's 3 or 4 other community boards in the Bronx that would be better served by having those facilities within their respective community boards. So again, I'm just curious, how is it that when you're making up decisions, you don't even take your own information into account?
Yes, I mean, it's a great question. And I think with the mental health and the increase of mental health, we'll see more data in the next version of the community health profiles. In terms of the diversion center, we don't know ourselves in terms of our neighborhood health action center why it was necessary to place there, because we're asked to do a lot of work to support that, but it's not really in our catchment area. So we would have to get back to you with that. Okay.
Any other questions?
Was that, Mr. Torres? Did you get the answer?
Oh, was you?
Did you get your answer?
Did she want to get your answer? Did you get your answer?
Oh yeah, are you done? Are you finished or are you done?
Okay.
Jeremy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy. Ooh, wow. I'm sorry if I missed this part. How's the data collected?
So the data in these profiles come from a lot of different sources available across the city. Some of them come from a community health survey, which is a survey of adults citywide. Some of them come from hospital records. We pull information from Department of Education, specifically related to graduation rates and absenteeism. The sources are all listed with each figure, and if you go to the website, you can also read more detail about how each indicator was collected, so there are differences.
Are you able to tell us, though, how the survey, the community health survey, how that's administered? Like, is it sent to people's homes? Is it done at the hospital?
Sure. I believe, I think I'm right about this. I believe the community health survey is a phone-administered survey. So it's administered across New York City, and they do take down zip code, and so they're able to cut the data by community district and other ways as well. And it's a representative sample.
But you don't know offhand if it's like mailed to people or?
It's a phone survey.
It's a phone survey?
Yes.
Okay. And you're not sure how those people are selected?
They're randomly selected, and then the sample that agrees to participate is looked at as they collect the data to make sure they're getting a representative sample. They sometimes oversample in communities where we know we're going to want to look more closely, like where our action centers are located, to make sure that they'll have enough folks in that neighborhood to be able to look just at that area.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Hall.
Another question. I was just curious, how are we doing with the measles situation? Do we have it under control? Is it still expanding, or are we decreasing? Or?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. So as I mentioned earlier, we are in the midst of the largest measles outbreak in New York City since the 1990s. Cases are growing. I think as of yesterday, we had 470 confirmed cases across New York City. To date, there's only been one resident in the Bronx who's a confirmed measles case. And we have a large team of competent staff working to both track the epidemic and take preventative measures as well.
So seeing no further questions, I want to thank you for your presentation. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
See you again. And I think a topic that's near and dear to the community boards will be next hearing from the Citywide Event Coordination and Management of New York City, of the New York City Mayor's Office, and new rules and features available for processing of street activity permits. So I'll have our presenters please introduce yourselves. Oh, or please set up. We'll give you a couple of minutes to do that. In the meantime, I think we'll go a little bit out of order and just go to some announcements in terms of activities. So I hope that everyone has already received and confirmed an RSVP for our Community Board Members Appreciation Evening, which is a part of Bronx Week. It is this Thursday, May 9th, 2019 at 6 p.m. right in this very room. So we enjoy the opportunity to appreciate, to give appreciation to all of you community board members who are volunteering and really giving a lot of great service to the communities. And you'll be happy to know that this year we are honoring our Bronx Community Board chairwomen. So the 2019, the year of the woman. Let's give those ladies a round of applause. We thank you so much for your service. And we will be dedicating tomorrow's event to you. Thank you so much. May 23rd, Thursday, May 23rd, 2019, again right here in the Rotunda, the Borough President will be celebrating the appropriate term. let's see, break the fast together. We'll be breaking the fast in terms of our residents who participate in the tradition of Ramadan, and we'll have that event here, and it's welcome to everyone. It's our traditional iftar dinner, and we hope that everyone will consider coming, joining us. It's a wonderful event, and it's very impactful, so we want you to please come out. That's May 23rd. In no particular order, we have another announcement, Bronx Israel Independence Festival. This is also May 9th, tomorrow's at 4:30 to 7 p.m. Israeli Soul and Song, and where is it? Hebrew Institute of Riverdale in conjunction with the Borough President's Office. So we want to invite everyone to join us at that event. Again, it is at the Hebrew Institute of Riverdale tomorrow at 4:30. Where we will be celebrating with this festival the 71st anniversary of Israel's independence. And such a wonderful event, and I'm looking, and look at that, look how that works. We are ready for the presentation. Please introduce yourselves, and we thank you for coming.
Hi, I'm Stephan Grybauskas, excuse me, Director of External Relations for Mayor's Office of Citywide Events. Also, you may know us as the Street Activity Permit Office. I'm joined by...
Hi, I'm Paresh Patel. Wow, that's loud. I'm Paresh Patel, so I'm the Database and Policy Project Manager for Citywide Event Coordination and Management.
And we're also joined by two other members of our team, the Acting SAPO Director, Desiree Beach, and the Street Fair Manager, Chanel Green. So let's get started. So I'm going to breeze through this because I'm assuming most of you are familiar with our office, but we'll be available for questions after, and Paresh is going to go over some of the database stuff that you guys use to interact with our office and approve permits, as well as some new features that we have. But just as an intro, who we are. Mayor's Office of Citywide Event Coordination and Management, aka CCM, provides resources regarding the necessary applications and licenses to produce an event in New York City. Within this office is the Mayor's Street Activity Permit Office, also known as SAPO, that issues permits for static events that take place on DOT property. This includes city streets, sidewalks, curb lanes, and pedestrian plazas. So I'm going to just go over our general event types, deadlines, quick process as it pertains to community boards, and some quick stats from the Bronx in the past year, and then we're going to go over some of the database stuff. So we've added two new features that Paresh is going to review, which is an applicant correspondence feature and a community board automated notification feature. This was based on feedback from community boards, so we've made those changes in light of some of your concerns. And just some of the stuff that we're doing, we host information sessions like this one with different city partners and city officials. So just before we go into the deep permit types, these are some events that you may be familiar with that are actually permitted by our office, but they're posted by agencies. We have the DOT weekend walks, which are the street closures on city streets in August on the weekends, where they close off a large swath of Manhattan. DOT play streets, which are closures of streets for kids to play in. Sorry, I don't know why I said summer streets is the ones where we close off multiple weekends in August. Weekend walks are actually more usually closures in business districts to promote local business. With no sales of goods on the street, so it's a little bit different from a street festival. It's usually hosted by a BID or another CBO. And then DEP Water on the Go, which is those water fountains in that picture, which are actually a street permit as well in order to place those. So just as a reminder, city agencies also get permits from our office in order to do stuff on the street. You could skip this. So I'm just going to go over the permit types real quickly, just so you know. I'm just first going to address block parties, which are one of the most popular permits that we have, but also some of the most misconstrued permits. A block party needs to be truly a residential street closure for the closure of a street with only residents on that block being really participating. There should be no sales of goods and services. It's only for one day. And we really look to the community boards to approve these, to really tell us if these are residents on the block that are deserving of that street closure. We don't require insurance and a lot of other things that we require for other events, so we really are getting strict on how those are permitted, because there's a lot of folks that just permit them for barbecues, for their church fundraiser, which really is not the true spirit of the block party permit, or for sales or concerts. So if you ever have any questions about what a block party truly is, just feel free to reach out to our office. We also permit farmers markets, which is a nonprofit sponsored open air market on a sidewalk. We do not do the ones in parks, that's run by the Parks Department. We only do the ones on sidewalks that are not adjacent to a park. Religious events, so this is like active public worship on the street. It needs to be a stationary one, a non-processional one. Those are permitted by NYPD. But this is not a church barbecue either, or a fundraiser. This is an actual active worship on the street. Cleanup, and as you can see, the deadlines are all along here. A cleanup is a 4-hour street closure for neighborhood beautification, usually done by a neighborhood block association or some kind of community group. And this enables them to have no parking so they can clean up the street more thoroughly. Health fair, this is a pretty common one in the Bronx. This is a community-sponsored event where health vendors provide in-kind services and require closing of one block or a portion of a street for one day. There's no sales of goods or services at this. This is supposed to be screenings and other health-related in-kind activities. Mobile unit, this is not a very common permit, but this is a staging of one or more vehicles for religious purposes. We also do press conferences, rallies, and demonstrations. These are only when they take place on a pedestrian plaza. Not on this, any demonstration or protest is permitted by the NYPD. But if it's on a pedestrian plaza that's a DOT plaza, we permit it. Single block festivals. This is what you may know as a street festival, but it's our exception to our moratorium rule, where it's a street fair that is only on one block for one day. A nonprofit must sponsor it, and it's limited to 2. Each nonprofit is limited to 2 per year. And then a street fair is a street festival is the classic New York City street festival. These have a moratorium on them, so if it was not held in the year prior, it can't be held in this year. These can be one or more blocks for one or more days, but again, these are all grandfathered in through our moratorium. There's no new ones at this point until we have a rule change. Street events are our kind of classic, any kind of activity that doesn't have vending going on in the street. These are usually taken out by nonprofits or for-profit organizations, and the fees vary depending on the size, scale, and whether they're for-profit or nonprofit. But this is our blank slate kind of permit where you're closing the street for an activation, for a fundraiser, for something like that. Okay, so continuing on, plaza events is the same thing as a street event, except they're held on plazas. The deadlines and prices vary depending on the plaza. Usually the Bronx would be a little bit cheaper than Manhattan because they're more widely trafficked and widely used, and more in demand. And then production event is just a permit. Usually it's a curb lane closure or sidewalk closure for the loading and unloading of an event, or like a pickup or drop-off lane for black cars for some kind of an event, but these are not meant to be branded or commercialized. And again, you can get all that information on our website. I'm sure most of you are familiar with it. And if you ever have any questions, feel free to reach out to our office. So I'm going to just go through the quick permit process here, just so you have an idea. So the applicant first goes on our website, they request a permit. We then send it to agencies in the community and the community board to review and recommend approval or denial. And then we assess a fee depending on what type of event it is. And then depending on the scale and kind of the amount of agencies needed to coordinate that event, we may have our own staff attend that event and inspect and monitor that event. So this may be a little hard to see, but I'm going to just read this in a little more detail. So once we receive an application, we place the application into pending status. We may reach out to the applicant if more information is needed. The system then generates an applicant report from the event details submitted with a description and contact information for each necessary support permit. So this is, say they tell us that they're having a generator of a certain size, they want a hydrant tap, they want a pull tap, they want a stage over certain dimensions. We're gonna then tell them to reach out to those other agencies to get the permits that they need from those other agencies. Because we won't issue our permit until we get all of the other permits that go along with it. After initial review, SAPO will notify pertinent city agencies for their recommendations. Community boards or plaza partners may request additional information from the applicant before recommending approval. Applicant may be required to submit signatures from local businesses and residents, site plans, production schedules, or verification of an organization's connection to the community. So this is where we're looking to you as community boards and kind of the shepherds of your community to let us know if this event really belongs in this community, if this block party applicant really lives on that block and has collected the necessary signatures that you determined to be necessary for them to have that block party there. But this is where we're reaching out to you to help us get these permits processed correctly. SAPO may require additional information about the proposed event or more information about the applicant, and then SAPO will determine if additional support permits are required. The applicant must obtain these, as I said before, in order to receive the SAPO permit. Upon feedback, SAPO may require the applicant to modify the event, change the event, or deny the event. Some event types are assessed additional fees, an invoice will be sent, and then when everything has been received, including support permits, insurance, assessment fees, and relevant agencies have signed off, then we'll issue the permit. Responding to application denial. So the community board, this is from our rules, but the community board shall notify the applicant in writing of their recommendation for approval, approval with conditions, or denial of a street activity permit application. Denial notifications should include specific reasons for the board recommendation to deny. So when you go into our system, which Paresh will review, and you issue a recommendation to deny or recommendation for approve, you should just make sure we have all the necessary information to understand why you're making that decision, and we may reach out to you for more clarification. If the community board or plaza partner recommends approval with conditions or denial of the permit, an applicant has 5 days to appeal directly to the SAPO director. So they have an opportunity, they'll get an email telling them they have 5 days to appeal, and their job is to reach out to us then. We give them 5 days to do it, and explain why they disagree with your recommendation to deny or your conditions, and then we will make a determination from that. If we deny, one more thing. If we deny them, the applicant is allowed the option to appeal directly to the executive director of CCM, who's not here, but she oversees SAPO and the CCM office, and then we're going to require a written appeal to her, and if she chooses to overturn, that's what we'll proceed from there. Next slide. Just a few more SAPO permit stuff. As I said before, SAPO approval does not constitute permission from other agencies. You must secure all necessary City of New York permits. We require $1 million certificate of liability insurance with the City of New York co-listed on all of these events, except for block parties that don't have rides. By rides, we just mean bouncy houses and that kind of small scale rides. We don't permit like Ferris wheels and stuff at block parties. Applicants or community sponsors for street fairs shall be limited to 1 event per application and 2 events per year. So this is what I was referring to with the single block festivals. Each nonprofit is only entitled to have 2. And then all street events, including block parties and street fairs, are required to recycle. Non-compliance is subject to fines. And we also require, if there's a full street closure, they need to indicate on their site plan and make it available at the event a 15-foot vehicle emergency lane. So I'm just going to run through some stats for the Bronx in 2018. We had 423 permits approved. This is out of our 4,000 or 5,000 or so total permits. I don't know if you can see, but you can see 47% of the permits in the Bronx were block parties. You actually go to the next slide. I have my listing. So the block parties are roughly even from year to year, as you could see on the last slide. And then here's our listing of the permits in order of highest to lowest. With block parties 198, street events 80, 36 health fairs, 20 single block festivals, 15 plaza events or plaza partner events, and then 8 production events, and then we have more stuff from there. And then just overall, we had 5,165, and you can see the Bronx is second to last in the number of permits. And just here's our overall agency permits. So parks, these are all permitted through our system, but they're they're permitted by, like we share a database that our office manages so that we don't permit against each other and we're aware of what other agencies are doing, but they all permit these permits in their office individually. So 24,000 for parks, 14,000 for film, 5,000 for SAPO, 927 NYPD, Hudson River Park, 444, and Brooklyn Bridge Park, 664. And then you can just see the comparison. We often get a lot of complaints about film, about permits, but film permits a lot more than us. So if you're having issues with them, take it up with them, not us. And then on our website, you can see we have this find events link where you can see approved events for the next 30 days all across the city. This is what that page looks like. Paresh's team manages this. Maybe I can hand it over to you now, but basically you can look. We also have a guide online that, I'll just do it. You can see anything that's permitted for the next 30 days that meets certain conditions. You can search by zip code, you can search by community board, you can search by agency type. As long as it's approved and it's within the next 30 days, you can see that. That's available on our homepage. There's a link for it under Find Events. Our page is nyc.gov/CCM. And then we also have this guide that you can download that has not only our agency's permitting rules, but also all the other agencies that do permitting and the support permits that go along with it. And that's that. And then Paresh is going to review. Do you have any policy questions? And then I'm going to hand it over for the database.
Mr. Hall and then Mr. Alcibiade.
Hi, Bill Hall, Ward 12. You mentioned moratoriums. I'm just curious, and you were talking very quickly, so I was trying to digest. What categories are under moratorium, and how did you decide what would be on the moratorium?
The moratorium, I think, has been in effect for how many years? A while. It's coded as a city rule. It's a rule of the city of New York. The only category that the moratorium affects is multi-block, multi-day street fairs. So like the big street fairs you see, I think the Bronx only has maybe 2 or 3 of them. But the big ones you're used to in Manhattan that go down 9th Avenue, or the feasts, the San Gennaro, stuff like that, those are the ones that are under a moratorium, so only the previous ones can exist. I think the rule's been in place for, I can't, step up to the mic? 15 plus years.
So we're going to have fewer of those in our local community board areas, fewer of the...
We lose on average, I would say like 3 or 4 a year, usually because of lack of applying by the December 31st deadline, which is how we keep it in effect. But unfortunately right now it's coded into the rules, so we need to do a rule change, which is going to involve a lot of surveys and traffic studies and stuff in order to change this. We attempted to change it about 2 years ago and that failed. There was a lot of community opposition from nonprofits that currently have these permits, and they were concerned about losing revenue because they're supposed to be fundraisers. So the nonprofits that currently have them were concerned about losing revenue, and they kind of launched a campaign against it. But we're all ears for other suggestions, and we need support in order to do that stuff. But right now, this is the situation.
Okay, I was just curious what categories were
Yeah.
monitoring. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alcibiade.
Thank you, Madam Deputy. I want a quick comment first. The SAPO team, Maria, Maureen, Chanel, and Desiree, they're excellent. So they're always on top of me. You can call them for information. They've been great, so I want to acknowledge that.
We'll send that. Desiree and Chanel
Yes,
will
thank you,
relay
thank
that.
you. My question is regarding the appeal process. Is the community board notified when an appeal is made by the applicant? And what role does the community board have with the appeal process? Thank you.
So you're referring to when they appeal your denial?
When they deny it for the applicant, yes.
Normally, we would reach out to you and let you know what our final consideration is.
So, but the board plays no role in the appeal process?
The appeal is once you've made your decision, they are coming back to us and explaining why. And I think usually it becomes a negotiation back and forth with you.
Great.
We do not usually, I don't have a stat to back this up, but we don't usually overrule the community board most of the time. I mean, we look to you and you are our eyes and ears on the ground, so.
Thank you, thank you.
Anyone else on this before I go over to Paresh?
We can't hear you without the microphone.
Hi. If the community board denies an event, we are going to hold it. If the applicant does not appeal, that denial process would be completed, we will also deny that applicant.
Thank you. My question is kind of more of a statement. My concern as the district manager, and I think I speak for all the community boards, is the anxiety that's generated from the delay in notification. I get a lot of calls from community organizations saying, oh, I did everything possible, I still don't have, they still didn't say yay or nay. And I recall being here last year with, not in another room, with the director of SAPO or CECM, and she said that a lot of the delay is in regards to the NYPD holding off until the very last second. Have you guys reconciled that, or are you looking at that in terms of speeding up the process?
So, I mean, the same way we send you guys notifications, we send it out to them at the same time. It really just varies precinct by precinct and on their response time. Our team does try to reach out to them by phone additionally as much as we can, but you know, we also are processing thousands of permits, so it's our capabilities are a little bit stretched in terms of being able to keep on them. But I think, you know, more meeting, we may think about this in the future about meeting with the NYPD and trying to stressing the importance of being up to date on this stuff, because we need their approval just as much as we need yours in order to even close the street. So I totally agree with you on that. But yeah, right now I think we were doing our best to try to keep on top of them. Some are better than others, and there's high turnover, and that doesn't really help the matter either. But
I'll echo what Ralph said about the staff. They're fantastic. But like I've been aware of SAPO for a million years. I worked in the mayor's office, but I'll just give you an example. I just signed up to CECM this past week. One of our elected officials had a march in the district, went off without a hitch other than the rain, but it came back to me on Monday as being rejected. And I was just like, how's that possible?
I know which event you're talking about.
Yeah.
I think that was meant to be an NYPD permit, and we just rejected it as a matter of practice to not leave it open. That was not our NYPD does marches, so we just rejected that. I think it was just a little bit late, but that was not denied as an event. It was just denied.
No, but I'm just showing you as an example that you took until Monday to actually make a decision.
Yeah, I know.
After the event.
That was an internal issue that usually is not common at our office. I'll talk to you guys about that. I know what that was. Sorry about that. But anyone else? Fresh is going to go over the system if you have system-specific questions.
Mr. McManus.
It says on this agenda, new rules. I didn't hear any new rules.
We don't have new rules. We just have new features in the database. There's no new rules.
Okay,
Other
thank
than
you.
the moratorium extension. So sorry if that's wrong.
We will make the necessary corrections on the agenda.
No, I mean, I'm just...
No new rules other than our moratorium was extended another year. That's the only major rule change we've had.
Did you say that again?
That's the only major rule change that we've had. Other than the only rule change we had is the moratorium being extended for another year this past year.
Okay, thank you.
Hey there. So just to shake things up a little bit, to answer this gentleman's question in the back, I forgot who that was. George. Hey. So just to piggyback off of that, it's pretty important to realize the distinction here. Retroactively, an erroneous SAPO permit was rejected or withdrawn because it should never have been submitted. So that what you witnessed or experienced was a cleanup. The NYPD permit was approved in a timely manner, I'm assuming, right? So that's sort of the you know, it's a little confusing to be sure, but that permit was just rejected because it was never approved and it was erroneous. So that's just to clarify that, because one of the benefits of the system we designed, we have 7 public-facing e-apply websites. That's what this is. So we have 2 for parks, one, you know, divided between athletic fields, all the ball games you see going on all over the city, and special events. And we have 1 for NYPD, which is primarily parades and processions, which was the approved event that went on without a hitch, as well as marathons and protests, I believe. And we also have a website highly underutilized, but for DCAS. And we have the Street Activity Permitting Office, which you know
Desiree and Chanel who are here. And we also have Hudson River Park, Brooklyn Bridge Park. So and of course, Phil, which is the heaviest hitter of permit submissions, primarily for parking requests for theater load-ins and load-outs and, film shoot requests, things of that nature. All those translate to about 80 to 90,000 applications being submitted through these 7 public-facing eApply websites into the centralized database. So there's a lot of back and forth, and what Stephan touched on this as well, is that the purpose of our database is to detect conflicts. And one of those would be an example of a conflict. There should not be both a SAPO and an NYPD permit for it. So that's what you witness. And it's actually a good, I'm not singling you out, but it's a good case study of what our database does. So that's just to clarify that. And one other thing too, I'm sure Desiree introduced herself, but she now is the acting director for SAPO. So the woman that you referred to, yeah, applause for sure. And that's Chanel Green too, she should get some applause too. So next slide, please. Show of hands. Everyone accessing the database, CEMS? All right. So you are weighing in with your comments, you are recommending approvals or denials, or you're abstaining, correct? And you're being notified. All right, good. So this is a basic process. If anyone has any questions on how to access the database, raise your hand now or we'll go on to the next slide. So we'll go on to the next slide. You guys are familiar with this. These are daily notifications on events that require your review. So this is a little tricky, right? You get these every day, and if you're a highly active community board, you're gonna see a lot of the events showing up over and over again. This is how that works. If my name is Paresh Patel, and I work in, Community Board 1, and also Desiree Beach works with me in Community Board 1, and Desiree Beach decides to weigh in on a comment on an event, but I don't, right? That Community Board 1 event will still disappear from this list because you've reviewed it. What this is doing is indicating events that you have to review. So that means either you abstained, recommended approval or denial, something along those lines. So that's why these events keep showing up. Understood? When you sign on to eApply, I want to make sure of something else too. This is the new eApply, and I say new kind of loosely. We've had this rolled out for about I would say a year and a half now at this point. Is everyone seeing this when they sign on, like it's the new system, it's blue and white? You have not, okay. So what you need to do is what I'll do is I'll do a mass distribution again after this meeting of all the CB active community board users that have access to our database, and I will send the new link. That is the new SAE you should be using, okay? So on this page, hold on for a second, Stephan. You have 3 major icons. One is to review upcoming events, current to future events. What's happening today is a quick and dirty list of everything that's going on in the city. And then you have your option to search for events in other community boards and boroughs and whatnot. So in terms of search options, quick navigation, it is just a cleaner version of what you may be experiencing in the original database, but you get to put in your date ranges that you're interested in to look for events. So if you want to look for the next, the month of July for 2019, you put July 1st through July, I forget how many days, 30th, 2019, and you can choose, and you can basically find out what kind of events are going on during that time frame. Naturally, you're going to see things that may have started months and months ago if they're recurring events such as farmers markets or street fairs or things along those lines. So that's your search feature. Any questions? Oh, no. And so when you sign on and when you click on upcoming events, which was a couple of slides ago, what used to be on one screen in the old system is now divided into 2 tabs. And what this screenshot is defaulting to is the events that you're required to review, all right? So that's why it's highlighted in blue there. And these are the ones, the SAPO events
that you can do those recommendations for in the comments section, and then write your free text notes on. The second tab is actually informational events. What used to be on the lower pane of the original SAE is now in a tab. And so those are like film events, NYPD, and I believe parks special events, not all the athletic events, because if you had those, you'd be overwhelmed with the thousands and thousands that occur on a monthly basis. So that's what informational events are. And again, the color codes hold true. So like, take a look at the screen, take it in, and realize there's a lot more information than you may appear. So color code represents different agencies, yellow represents film, orange represents SAPO, green represents park, and so forth. So this is one of the new features that we were talking about. There's now real-time event status updates, and basically each CB will receive a real-time flash notification with the subject that says event status update in caps or whatever, and it'll basically, this will occur whenever an event's status has changed from either pending to denied or denied to pending or approved. All right, so those are major status changes. So again, if an event was pending, awaiting approval, but was denied, you'll get a flash notification as it happens. If an event was denied and then it was changed back to pending or approved, you'll get a flash notification.
Did you get a flash notification about that March getting denied or pending to denied? So that's the system in action.
Wow, Georgia, we're really singling you out. No, but it's a good example. So, any questions on this notification? And this was a request from the community board, so hopefully this is satisfying that request. Another thing that we'll do that in conjunction with that is now, remember I was telling you about the two tabs of reviewing your upcoming SAPO events, and then the second tab was informational events, NYPD, film, etc. We now have a third tab, which actually lists those events that you may have already commented on, but now that there's that status change, you may want to comment on again. It's just giving you a heads up.
So this is so you can see, say for example, you've already approved an event or recommended approval, and we change the location or we change the date. While we'll make our best effort to reach out to you guys to let you know about this stuff or re-notify you, sometimes things get a little lost, so this is just a way for you to see that stuff as if it's changed after you've commented on it, just so it's all in one place, stuff that's been modified.
A quick question. What happens if you do not get a flash, and let's say it's a Saturday morning, and the event continues to take place? So they are in violation?
Yeah, we would look to you to let us know that they're in violation. We put a violation on their event, and then next year they would need to make right with us and explain.
But the fact that we did not get a flash say, at the community board, I mean, how does that work in terms of?
So I'm not sure what you mean, like the event got denied by us and they had the event?
In other words, they were not notified, and their event was on a Saturday morning, and as of Friday, they were not notified. The board did not receive a flash, as you just mentioned, and their event is scheduled for 9 o'clock that morning, and they continue with their event.
So they wouldn't be in violation because you didn't receive a flash, but we designed the flash notifications for basically that exact scenario where Friday you're assuming that the event is not taking place, or you're assuming it is, and we at 5 o'clock they're scrambling to get the permit fixed, and we change it at 5 o'clock. That flash would go out as soon as we changed it. The idea is so that you get it by email faster than just opening up our webpage, and you're notified that way. I mean, we wouldn't be approving anything on Saturday morning. We basically close regular business hours, so that would be the end of our day anyway. But that's exactly the reason why community boards requested this feature, is because we had last minute changes that they weren't checking on, and they were assuming the event was going on as planned or not, and then we changed it. So that's the point of this whole feature.
All right, so
We have one more question.
Is that okay? Can
Yes.
I? Okay, I wasn't sure when I could jump in. Thank you. I know you guys have a million things to do, but I wonder if you would consider this suggestion. The city charter says that community boards do not meet in July and August. would you consider sending a notification to those who need permits that if they want, and you want, and we want, to be able to weigh in on an application, that it gets to us for our May or June committee and board meeting?
That's definitely a common request that we get. I think we would need to do a rule change in order to change our deadlines, because right now our deadlines are rolling. Unfortunately, in the summer, and this is just an unfortunate situation, but the summer is our busiest time of year. We have folks that apply for block parties in June, for August, or within the 60-day deadline. Obviously, that's certainly something that we take seriously, but at this point, we can't change, unless we change our rules, our deadlines continue to remain rolling.
I'm not asking that you make it a hard and set rule. I'm just suggesting, would there be a way that you could notify them please get it in by May and June? Just a notification. Please be aware of the fact that, without mandating.
Do you mean notify all of our potential applicants? Because the only way we could suggest that would be on our website, because we don't know what potential applicants we might get until they actually apply. Regarding community boards meeting, we try to do our best with accommodating that, but we can't. I don't think there's anything we could do short of a rule change in terms of changing our policy. But I do recognize that is an issue, and we have that across the city.
I mean, I try to shy away from policy, so Stephan, keep me honest on this. But I would assume that every community board, and hopefully I know they vary, but I would assume at this point every community board has sort of a website presence, and sort of that can also be an alternative of communicating that information just to the public, I mean, I don't want to confuse the issue, but perhaps, right? Okay. So other basic things, again, whoever's not used the new system yet, this may be useful to you. What I'll do, in addition to sending out the reminder that there is this new website that's been around for a year and a half now, I'll send out like a very quick user guide. But this is just navigational stuff. It's fairly intuitive. But one of the benefits of the newer system, just so you know too, is that it has everything atop. So like when you open up an event, you'll see all this important information that's frozen on the pane. And those are things like event ID, its approval status, who in the SAPO, on Desiree's team is responsible for those permits, things along those lines. And there are also hyperlinks so that you can actually click on an email of the applicant and directly email the applicant. Not that you need to do that, but those are options there. So this is just a navigational screen. And then these are the different tabs. So what we have is you default, when you click on the link that represents the event ID, it opens up the summary page. So that summary page is the same as before. It just shows the event basic information, start and end time. And you scroll down, you get contact information, and then you scroll down further, and you get what are known as instructions as per the agency, and instructions that are specifically for that applicant. So an instruction would be if they're having amplified sound, and they're having it at a certain location within a certain community board in Bronx, they have to go to that local precinct to get that sound permit. So that's an example of an instruction for the applicant. So another final new feature is this correspondence, and this is sort of relevant to something. Somebody else had a question about appeals and stuff. You are notified when an applicant, let me backtrack. The new feature is this. A lot of emails, unbeknownst to the folks in the community boards, are going on back and forth between the SAPO staff and the applicant. We're trying to rein that in and categorize it. So now in e-apply, remember the public-facing initial application entry for SAPO applicants, in e-apply, they now have a correspondence feature, and they can choose different categories. And those categories could be anything like they have just a general question, or oops, they didn't really mean that they wanted a small street event, they want a medium-sized street event. That's an event type change. Or they want to change the location. They're categorical things. So what the applicant is now supposed to do, and SAPO is doing a very good job of enforcing this, is tell the applicant, instead of emailing us, go back onto e-apply, choose your category, write your question. And along these lines with appeals, there is a category that says, I think it's appeal my events denial, specifically addressing denials. And in that instance, they'll write whatever they want to write, because this stuff has to be not only documented, it has to be saved as part of the record for that application, right? So once they submit that inquiry, whoever is in charge of that community board's applications would get notified as well. So that's sort of another piece that's going on.
The goal of this was so that the community boards can also see this back and forth going on with SAPO, with the applicant, and you guys can see their request for a date change or see their request, and you can see their appeal of the denial here as well if they don't email it to us, if they put it in here. So encourage the applicants to use this feature. It's on their event portal, and you can see it in your portal as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. And so that's it. Any question, and you guys will see this correspondence, all right? And there's, the categories are here, so. Yeah, and so another feature in here is, I don't know how often community boards have to leverage this, but you do have the ability to upload documents that are relevant to that event. And they could actually, oh, is that true? They can't upload? No, I misspoke. You guys can't upload it. You can view the they can? Oh, yeah. So you can also view the documents that are uploaded too by the other app, by SAPO, if SAPO designates it as community board should view these documents, as well as by the applicants. So any questions on that? So these are the same features, it's just cleaned up. And I think you're familiar with the statuses, this same drill. You know, you're reviewing and you're recommending approval or denial or abstaining. And another feature is the event violations. There's a tab for that. I hope that you guys are now seeing this. This has been about 2 years now in the running where we're tracking violations a little more carefully within the system. Any questions on that? And this final thing is conflicts. Like if you're looking down at the summary page, if you scroll all the way down, you will actually see like a mapping of the stuff, and it'll show you if there are conflicts. It'll show you what events it might be conflicting with. Conflicts don't necessarily mean just exactly in the same location. Sometimes conflicts can be very close to each other, like 100 meters apart or whatnot. And that's it. That's just a regular glossary. Any questions on the database or the e-apply process? Okay.
Wow. No questions, comments, concerns? Excellent. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Moving right along, we'll move into announcements. We have made, from the Borough President's Office, have made our announcements, but if there are anyone in the audience or on our board that would like to announce something, an upcoming event, or make comments, now's the time. Friend to the Bronx.
Good morning. Jackie Carter, how are you doing today? Should I come up by you?
I think you're good.
I'm good. Thank you so much. I hope everyone's having a good day. I just want to make a very wonderful announcement. We, as everyone knows, we are continuing working on the Bronx bus redesign project. Many of you have participated in our workshops, our online surveys, and now we're to the point in which we are going to start preparing for our public open houses. We are scheduling those open houses to begin the middle of June. We're at the process right now in which we are finalizing the locations. And as soon as those locations are finalized, we're going to email blast every one of you, and we want to seriously encourage all of you, your constituents, your friends, your family, to come out to these open houses.
Hold on 1 second.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of movement, and it is a little bit distracting even to me. So if everyone could just settle in, and we're back to you.
Thank you. The public open houses, they were mentioned to you before since we've been talking about this Bronx redesign since last year. So many of you had hosted workshops, had been to workshops. I always like to thank all of you very much. Now we're getting to the fun part. All that information that we've gathered, we have a first draft. And if you go back to our website, you go back to all the presentations, you'll see, according to the timeline, we should be ready to be showing you a first draft of all this data that we've collected. That's why these open houses, and I'm saying open houses because it's going to be more than one. We're going to have a group in June, and we're going to have a group in the fall. You're going to see what's being proposed. That's why you need to come out. That's why you need to encourage all of your constituents to come out. You need to see, based on all the data, what's being proposed. So now you come out, you give your opinion, we gather that opinion, and you'll see according to the timeline again, we start having more meetings, more meetings, more meetings. So in addition to the open houses, again, I like to offer for us to come to the community boards to also share this first draft. I keep on saying first draft because I have to remind all of you, this is a year project. So we're just starting, we're about halfway through. So as again, I'm offering that if you would like for us to come to your districts, to your transportation committee, your municipal service committees, like we did for the existing condition reports, we'll be very happy to also show your committees that draft in addition to showing them and sharing them with you at the open houses. I will be sending out emails very shortly of the locations throughout the borough. Try to come to more than one. Thank you.
I just have one comment, and then Mr. Hall.
Just want to, oh, I'm sorry. Comment now or?
I would like to comment,
sorry,
and then your turn, Mr. Hall.
All right.
You're very, actually, you know what? You're very excited. Go ahead.
I just wanted to, at this point, extend the invitation to Board 12 again, because we had a very large turnout when you did come, and I think it's very important. We have a lot of bus routes in our area, so if we want to invite you to Board 12 for your next review. That's all.
See, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Okay.
I was going to say go to Board 12. No, but what I wanted to do is also piggyback off of that, and I know that the bus routes are something that we take very seriously in the Bronx, and they're utilized so much that there are opinions about the routes and improvements that are significant. I know we all have opinions, whether you use them every day or only sometimes, and I think that is very important that we try to get out the information into our community boards and when the next hearing is, and then also participate, because at the end of the day, we don't want to say we were not a part of the discussion, especially with something so important as the bus routes. And to be honest, I'm saying this, not Jackie. Who knows when they'll look at it again, right? You know, and who knows when you'll have another opportunity to get some input into any type of change. So I just wanted to encourage everyone. I know that I'm preaching to the choir when I speak to you about the importance of these things, but it's always good to encourage participation, because I think that is so instrumental at this point in time to do that in regards to the review and the updating of the bus routes. Any other questions and comments, concerns, or announcements? Yes, Sierra.
I have an announcement. Earlier you stated 2019 is Year of the Woman. We have a women's suffrage event that we've put together with the special funding from City Council. It's going to be on Sunday, May 19th from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. at Wave Hill. I can forward around the invite, but we're going to have a lecture from the Bronx Historical Society discussing the women's right to vote and the women's suffrage, which actually there was a march from Van Cortlandt Park and 242nd Street to Albany. back when women were fighting for the right to vote. So it's very interesting and local to us in CB8. Thank you.
Yes, George?
I do have a request. The mayor just put out his executive budget. Tom sent out an email saying that we only received, I think, $8,500 right now. It's still being negotiated. As community boards collectively, I can only speak for us. We spent the $42,500 that we got. I'd like to see it again in next year's budget. I'd also like to see it baseline. Maybe collectively, as all the community boards, we can have conversations, or maybe the borough board can take up something so that we can have a conversation, so that we can fight for that funding. I'd hate to see it reduced in this year's upcoming budget.
Thank you, George. I think it's that's something we can possibly help facilitate coming together with some type of a meeting around that subject of funding. Anyone else? Well, this rarely happens, but we have silence, so I think we're going to take advantage of that and dismiss everyone. But I definitely want to, before we dismiss and encourage everyone to come to Bronx Week. It is one of the most exciting things that happens in the Bronx for 10 days. Thank you, and see you next month.